Guys, thank you so much for joining us. It's an honor and a privilege as people are jumping on tonight. Just want to kind of do a recap of where we are as far as just in this series. We had Dr. Sweets, who'll be joining us later, but to kick us off on this theme called resilience. And just before I introduce our speaker, just wanted to kind of remind us of that. You know, that theme of the definition, of resilience is the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties. The capacity to recover quickly from difficulties. Words like toughness and things of that nature was thrown out. And so Dr. Sweet kicked us off with that. And then, talking about the mind and the body and how to be resilient. And we brought in Dr. Niadi as well. He's on tonight. Good to see you, Doc. And Doc really just brought us into a mindset of the mind and how to overcome obstacles through the mind during this process. And, me and Dr. Schaefer and Pastor Nathan were talking earlier just of the pattern of everything from COVID to politics to social injustice to all kinds of things that have just worn on us over these last several months. And we have to keep fighting and we have to keep moving forward. And so I wanted to bring in Dr. Schaefer to bring us on home into 2020. No pressure, as I told him earlier, no pressure. But, as doctors, man, I wanted to let you guys know we got guys in our church that love Jesus and they're not ashamed of the Lord, but they're also excellent in their profession. And I'll tell you a little bit about the man that'll be speaking right now. He's a practicing cardiologist serving in the community of New York City, dedicates his time to improving the cardiovascular health of his patients through diagnosis and treatment. His practice is in Midtown West with patients coming from all over 5 boroughs and the tri-state area to see him. Unfortunately, Dr. Schaefer got his MD from Michigan. I'm just kidding, right? That's inside joke.
It's okay, you can say it.
It's a good thing.
So I know there's people there, and completed his residency in internal medicine at Albert Einstein College University at Yeshiva University at Montefiore Medical Center. And, this man is, without further ado, he's got so many accolades, man, I could talk about him all night. He's a great man, and I just want him to get right to it tonight with us. So without further ado, our own Dr. Michael Schaefer, please take it away.
Thank you, Pastor Shino, and thank you, Pastor Nathan. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here with you guys tonight, and I'm very proud to be part of this series, which is so important. And I'm glad we're focusing on this as a church, resilience. And I love that definition because whether you're having issues of the heart, other issues of the body, or issues of the mind and soul, you need resilience to get through. And this year has really proved that probably more than others, at least in the past recent history. Like Pastor Shino said, I'm a cardiologist. I practice in the city. I have a practice a stone's throw away from 414 on 52nd Street in Midtown West, which, contrary to what you hear, is not a ghost town. We're out there. There's a lot of people there. In my office, it's like every other day in New York City pre-COVID. It's full. There's patients coming in. So don't believe all that hype you hear if you're not in the city. It's definitely not a ghost town. And there's a lot of us that are right here in it. And we're all here to make this city better. My practice really revolves around taking care of heart patients, everything from patients that are referred to me for potential heart problems to patients that have suffered major heart attacks, heart rhythm issues, all kinds of heart disease problems I see. And I know probably first and foremost on your mind right now is dealing with COVID. A lot of you probably know people, if you yourself have not had COVID, you know people that have had COVID, maybe even some people that have died from it. So I know that is a hot topic right now, rightly so. And what I'm going to talk about is really can be applied to both protecting your heart and protecting you from COVID and making your body resilient if you are to get COVID. So what's good for the heart is very good for the body. So a lot of what I'm going to talk about is stuff you can do, lifestyle modifications that you can put into place, a practical application of what you can do to really help yourself stay healthy and help yourself get healthy. Sorry, I'm trying to advance the slides here. There we go. All right. So this year has been a challenge like no other, spiritually, emotionally, and physically. You know, we started off the year with COVID. We've seen a lot since then. We've seen a lot of racial injustice that's really gripped our nation, and we've had to come full speed ahead into overcoming that. First of all, recognizing it, and then putting things into place to overcome it. And the culmination of all that has really led to a lot of health issues in general. I put this verse here from John 10. I like it because I think this is Jesus telling us that he really wants us to have a life that's abundant, a life that's full. So even though 2020, the thief has come only to steal and kill and destroy, Jesus says that I have come that they may have life and have it to the full, or have it abundantly. And that applies to all aspects of life, healthy spiritually, emotionally, physically. He doesn't just want to protect our souls. He wants to protect our bodies while we're here. He wants to protect our mental health. And all of that is really key. And I'm very glad that this series has focused on the importance of mental health, because I think that gets pushed to the wayside often. You know, Dr. Nee talked about the extreme importance of community, which, as we see now, is so important, being distanced and apart from each other. We see the importance of that. We recognize it. And just as much as we recognize that, we have to realize that taking care of our bodies and our hearts is equally important. We are a vessel. We're a vessel for the Holy Spirit, and we have to protect that vessel and keep that vessel healthy. So like I said before, I think, you know, you're going to realize what's good for your heart is also good for your body. So if you're taking care of your heart, you're pretty much taking care of every other organ in your body. Now, you may not be aware, but heart disease is a very big problem worldwide, in particular in the United States. About 30 million adults are diagnosed with some form of heart disease. That could be blocked arteries, that could be rhythm problems of the heart, that can be heart weakness. But that is a very large percentage of the population, approximately 12%. This is based on 2018 data. You know, right now, it's the tally of people that have died from COVID in this country is about 275,000 people. So by the end of the year, we're likely going to have near 300,000 people this year that have died of COVID at least. That may even be an underestimate from people that we didn't capture earlier on in the year, and possibly even a year ago. Last December, it was probably in this country, COVID, and we just didn't know. And people probably died from it. It was not recorded as a COVID death. But to put that in perspective, about 650,000 people, over double of what are going to die of COVID this year, are going to die from heart disease, making it the #1 cause of death in the US. And that, of course, does not minimize the mortality, the death we see with COVID, but it puts it in perspective how big of a problem heart disease is. And there's many factors that go into developing heart disease. There's basically factors you can't modify and factors you can modify. Things you can't: age. The biggest risk factor for heart disease, just getting older. Got to embrace that. As it is with a lot of other diseases, the older we get, the more likely we are to develop certain health problems, and heart disease is first and foremost. Men, gender, traditionally, in prior studies have shown to be higher risk of heart disease. So this is very important for all of us. Heredity, your family. Most importantly, first-degree relatives, which are your parents. If you had a mother or father with heart disease, you're at higher risk, especially if your mother or father had heart disease at a relatively young age, like 40s and 50s, you're certainly at higher risk. And race. Unfortunately, heart disease mirrors a lot of other health problems in this country, and that those that come from lower socioeconomic backgrounds are at higher risk of having heart disease. And that's a very multifaceted problem. A lot of it starts with access to healthcare, access to good food, access to proper nutrition, access to good exercise regimens. All of that plays in. So we have a lot to work on as doctors, but also the church can play a role in this. But there's also, you know, these things that you can't modify, you kind of have to live with, but, you know, that's where other things can, like lifestyle and medicine, can help set it straight. What I like to say is you can't go back and get new parents, so you got to do the things you can do. So the things you can modify that put you at risk, and something that affects almost a third to a half of Americans, is having at least one of high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and cigarette smoking. almost half of Americans have at least one of those. The good news is all of that's modifiable. Quitting smoking is not easy. It's a real addiction. It's a very difficult addiction for a lot of people to overcome, but it certainly is overcomable. You can quit. High blood pressure, high cholesterol can both be managed both with lifestyle and medicine. We always start with lifestyle first, but if that's not enough, that's where medicine can take over and really reduce the blood pressure, reduce the cholesterol, and thereby reduce your risk of heart disease. Diet is one of the biggest things that you can do to keep yourself not only lower risk of heart disease, but lower risk of many other diseases like cancers and coronavirus. In general, when we talk about diet, the biggest culprits with heart disease are the bad fats, what we call saturated fats, trans fats, cholesterol as well. And we'll get into more of the specifics of that. And in general, the plant-based foods are the healthiest. Think of things that grow on earth. Activity can certainly be modified. I like to tell my patients all the time that sedentary is the new smoking. Sitting down in front of a Zoom audience like this all day is bad. You got to get up and move. Doesn't matter if you're standing or walking, it's much better than sitting. So exercise is key. Weight also comes in hand with that, very modifiable. Weight is sometimes difficult to measure. We often think of just excess fat, but it's also the distribution of that fat. You've probably heard of the body mass index. That's a ratio of your weight to your height. The larger that is, the higher risk you are. But another good measure is the waist circumference. If you take just above your hip bones, if you feel your hip bones on your side, and for us men, if you measure that, basically measure your gut, if that's greater than 40 inches, you're at higher risk of having heart disease. And that's because as men, we have the apple-shaped bodies. We deposit the fat around our belly. Women have more of a pear shape. They deposit on their hips. So for men, if we got a lot of that excess belly fat, that puts us at higher risk of having heart problems and other problems like diabetes. Diabetes, very modifiable. There's different types of diabetes. Some people do require insulin. Others can manage it with lifestyle or other oral medications, but certainly in the modifiable category. Alcohol, people like to quote things all the time to talk about how alcohol may be beneficial. And there is some truth to that. There are some studies that show a small amount of alcohol, ideally no more than 1 5-ounce glass of wine per day, could be beneficial for the heart. It may have some benefits on the blood vessels, relaxing the blood vessels, preventing plaque formation, which is what builds up in the arteries and causes blockages. A small amount of alcohol can be good. However, it's often overstated. Even the US Preventative Service Task Force, which gives recommendations, still says the average man can have 2 alcoholic beverages a day for a total of 14 per week. But the newer data really suggests that having more than 7 to 10 spread out over the week increases your risk of all kinds of cancers, liver problems, earlier cognitive decline, and heart disease. So really you want to limit it. Small amount is okay, but it is a toxin. If you have too much of it, can actually weaken your heart. Stress, never going to go away. And in fact, stress is good. As Pastor Shino knows from the football days, stress is what motivates you and actually makes you successful. You can't be a good football player. You can't be a successful professional. You can't really do much without a certain level of stress to motivate you. However, stress can quickly become out of control, and managing stress is key. And you can manage stress with lifestyle. You don't need medications or drugs to do that. There's a lot of good lifestyle measures. So I'm going to dig further into this, and just keep in mind that, what's good for your heart, also good for your body and protecting you against infectious diseases like COVID. And also if you were to get something like COVID, this kind of healthier lifestyle makes your body more resilient and makes you more likely to have a good recovery. I like this quote, the first letter that Paul wrote to the Corinthians. As a lot of you probably know, Corinth was a pretty prosperous city. However, they dealt a lot in hedonism and had a lot of sexual immorality. So when Paul was writing to the Corinthians, he was mainly talking about this in the context of freeing yourself from that sexual immorality. But also I like to think of that as also a good, healthy lifestyle to put in place for your body in general. So do you not know that your bodies are temples of the Holy Spirit, who is in you, whom you have received from God? You are not your own. You were bought at a price. Therefore, honor God with your bodies. So again, he was primarily talking to honor God in terms of getting rid of all the sexual immorality that's in there. But he also means you need to honor your body physically and take care of your body because you are a vessel of the Holy Spirit. To break it down to 4 healthy habits that you can do to keep your heart healthy and your body. Sounds easy, but these 4 principles will guide you. Number 1 is don't smoke cigarettes. Most people think of things like lung cancer. You're actually much more likely to get heart disease or emphysema from smoking and not actually lung cancer. So smoking is probably the single worst thing you can do for your body. It's a real addiction. It's very difficult for some people to break. There is help. Everything from hypnosis to medications, nicotine replacement can help you quit smoking. Obviously, as Christians, we know the power of prayer that needs to be implemented. But make that your number 1 goal if you do smoke cigarettes, to quit smoking. That will be the healthiest thing you can do for your body. And the good news is, in terms of protecting your heart, after you've quit beyond 5 years, your risk of heart disease essentially goes back to that of a non-smoker. Never too late to quit. Exercise, we'll dive into that. Eating healthy, we're going to dive into that, as well as managing stress. All of those are key elements. So first, let's get into exercise. This is another great passage I like to use from 1 Corinthians, where he talks about the importance of self-discipline. Paul is, again, writing to the city of Corinth, which is a very prosperous place, but overrun with sin. He says, do you not know that in a race, all the runners run, but only one gets the prize? Run in such a way as to get the prize. Everyone who competes in the games goes into strict training. They do it to get a crown that will not last, but we do it to get a crown that will last forever. Therefore, I do not run like someone running aimlessly. I do not fight like a boxer beating the air. No, I strike a blow to my body and make it my slave, so that after I have preached to others, I myself will not be disqualified for the prize. No one's going to be, unless you're, wealthy and you can pay a personal assistant to be there tapping your shoulder to stay in line. No one's going to be there tapping your shoulder telling you to get up and exercise, to eat healthy. You have to learn to have the self-discipline to do that. And you can do that by giving yourself small, achievable goals every day. It might just be, no, I'm not going to have that 3rd Krispy Kreme today. Even if it's that, just go for it. Give yourself one good positive thing to do, and then you build on that discipline, and that gives you confidence and you keep going forward. I tell my patients all the time, exercise is the only way to stay young. People want a pill, they want plastic surgery, they want lipo, they want many ways to stay young, but honestly, exercise is the only way to do it. And unfortunately, in the US, about 10% of premature deaths are associated with inadequate exercise. Premature deaths meaning people that are too young to die, should not have otherwise died, and that's highly preventable. So 10% of premature death, that's a lot. So you can cure a lot just by getting more active. And exercise does more than just burn calories in the moment, tone muscle in the moment. We're finding from genetic research that it upregulates certain genes so much that children and adolescents that start exercising and continue are much less likely to develop adulthood obesity and have other health problems. So those of you that have children, very important to educate them about being active and exercising. It's very good for the development of their brains and their bodies. And again, it's doing more than accomplishing in the moment. It's upregulating certain genes that can protect their health years down the road. So starting at a young age is key. And I see that with my patients, those that are in their middle age to older age that never exercise. It's a lot harder for them to lose weight. They tend to have more joint problems. They tend to have higher blood pressure, higher cholesterols. They tend to have higher incidence of heart attacks. So getting young or getting healthy and exercise at a young age is key. So please stress that on the young people in your life. Many benefits of exercise. You lower your risk of heart disease death. You also lower your risk factors associated with heart disease, like obesity, weight gain, hypertension, diabetes. Also, many kind of cancers, you have a lower risk, in particular for men, bladder, colon, esophageal, kidney, lung, and stomach cancers, lower incidence in men who exercise. Great for the mental health, and we're seeing that more than ever now. I have a lot of patients that are cooped up in their apartment, very anxious. That leads to not only things like anxiety and depression, but that starts to impact higher cognitive function like memory, attention, processing speed. So those that exercise have improved cognition. Also, you have the added benefit of having less anxiety and depression. When we exercise, we release endorphins, which are in our brain, which is kind of like our happy hormones. It gives us a sense of satisfaction. We feel more pleasant. We can relax better. We can sleep better. So not only does it really impact positively the body, but the mind, very important. Bone health. When you exercise, you maintain strength. And when you maintain strength, you have a lower risk of falls and associated injuries. And you see that especially in the elderly. Those that maintain some muscle strength and mass have less chance of breaking hips when they fall and less chance of falling in general. One of the most common problems I get, which is very difficult to treat, but one of the most common things my patients mention is difficulty sleeping. Almost everybody has it. But if you exercise, you will sleep better. You want to try to do it a good 3 hours before you go to bed. If you do it within a 3-hour window, you're probably going to be up a little bit longer than you like. But if you stop exercising 3 hours before you go to bed, you will sleep better. And not only will you get more sleep, but the quality will be better. So many good reasons to exercise. How do you do it? Well, for older people and for people who have joint injuries or musculoskeletal problems where they can't do anything more intense, just walking is fundamental. And you want to try to achieve about 7,500 to 10,000 steps daily. There's a lot of good tech now. If you have an iPhone, there's a built-in step counter. It's a pedometer. It's in the health app. It comes with every iPhone. If you click on that, it automatically records the amount of steps you walk. As long as the phone is on you, in your pocket, in your hand, in your coat, in your bag, if you're moving, it'll sense it and give you a rough idea of how many steps you're walking. Obviously, Fitbits, Apple Watches, Android phones, all of that will record your steps. So try to achieve at least 7,500 every day from the minute you get up to the minute you go to bed, step, and try to get 7,500 to 10,000 daily. Now, again, that's great if you're older, if you're unable to do more intense exercise, but the data really shows if you can engage in more at least moderate intensity exercise, that you have lower risk of heart disease beyond just walking. So the goal is to get at least 150 minutes of moderate intensity aerobic activity weekly. Moderate intensity for a lot of people is not that much. For someone like Pastor Shino, an athlete, this is nothing. Brisk walking, light effort bicycling, that's moderate intensity exercise. So if you do that for 150 minutes a week, however you want to break it up, 5 days a week, 30 minutes at a time, 3 days a week, 50 minutes at a time, try to make that your minimum target, okay? What I like to say is break a sweat. Something in those sessions, you should be getting your heart rate up enough that you're breaking a sweat. If you do that for 150 minutes a week, you're giving your body substantial help. For vigorous activity, which is basically anything beyond moderate, for people that like to do CrossFit, running, intense cycling, swimming, that's all more vigorous intensity. Even 75 minutes a week gives you more benefit. In addition to the aerobic activity, what's also important is maintaining muscle strength. And you can do that through any kind of resistance training, free weights, resistance bands, anything where you're working against gravity, like walking up steps, doing body squats, squats with weights. Try to make that part of your weekly routine as well. And the key is to really make it a lifestyle decision. Don't get in the habit of saying, I'm just going to exercise for these 3 months to get in shape, to chisel my body, and then I'm going to let it go. That's not the way it works. Binge exercise, like binge dieting, just doesn't work. Make it a lifestyle choice. And the good news is you don't need to be a marathon runner, a triathlete, some crazy CrossFit junkie. All you need to do is at least moderate intensity exercise for 150 minutes a week and throw in a couple of days of strength training as well. If you've never done it, start light. You want to warm up, do some not only stretching, but mobile exercises to warm the body up, and start light. Listen to your body. That's key. You don't want to overdo it. You could risk injuring yourself. So take it light and build up over time. There's no urgency to get to a peak level. You just want to get moving, get the heart rate up, break a little sweat, and build on that. So move more with more intensity and sit less. For those that are, more into the higher level of intensity exercise, you probably heard of HIIT, high intensity interval training. A lot of good research that actually may be even beneficial beyond just the moderate intensity exercise. So the idea of that is you do a short burst of intense exercise followed by a short period of rest. A lot of Trainers, if you have a personal trainer, will teach you this. You can learn a lot of it on your own. A common method is called an EMOM, every minute on the minute. So you think of a 60-second interval. You do something for about anywhere from 20 to 45 seconds, and then you rest for the remainder of that minute for 40 to 15 seconds, depending on what you're doing, and then start again when that second hand hits the minute. So that's a short burst of intense exercise, things like doing burpees, body squats, can be anything really, but something where you're getting your heart rate up enough that you're breaking a sweat. It reduces body fat, reduces blood sugar, blood pressure, cholesterol. People tend to have higher cognitive mental health scores, both cognitive and mental health. So like processing speed in terms of cognition, and then also depression and anxiety scores are better for people that do this. So this is kicking it up a notch. Again, you don't have to start on this right away, but it's a very popular theme right now. So the data on it's looking very promising. So if you are someone who likes to do something more vigorous, it's a great way to train. And it's very high yield. You're going to spend less time doing it and get more bang for your buck, so to speak. So it's something that you can even do 10 to 15 minutes a day. You see these workouts now where they're carving out 7 to 10 minute high intensity workouts per day. You do that 7 days a week, you're getting 70 minutes right there. So that's fantastic. So it's something that you should consider if you're really looking to kick it up a notch. So the next most important thing beyond exercise is eating healthy. And again, this has got to be a lifestyle decision, not just something you do for a few weeks, not just something you do where at the beginning of the year, we always have a fast for the church, which is a lovely spiritual thing, but you don't want to just practice good, healthy eating habits for a week and then go back to your holiday, Christmas and Thanksgiving eating. There's a few scripture passages I like to use here when it comes to eating healthy. First in Genesis, God said, I give you every seed-bearing plant on the face of the whole earth and every tree that has fruit with seed in it. They will be yours for food. And I reiterate this to my patients, even without being so spiritual about it, by telling them that, God gave us everything we need right here on the earth. All sorts of plant-based foods. He gave us those seeds, those grow into an abundance of different fruits and vegetables, legumes. So take advantage of that. That's what God has given us. And that should be the foundation and core of our diet. This next one you're very familiar with, I'm sure. So whether you eat or drink or whatever you do it all for the glory of God. Remember, we're not eating to just satisfy our taste buds and just something that makes us feel good. We have to eat also for the glory of God. And part of that is eating healthy to protect your body. In the book of Daniel, in the first chapter there, he's, Nebuchadnezzar comes in and basically takes over Judah and Israel and grabs up some strong Israelites, Daniel, of which is one, and they want them to eat the king's food. And the king's food is probably what gave you gout, like cheese and meats and wine, all that stuff that we know now killed kings and made them fat and gave them gout. But Daniel actually took the opposite and said, in Daniel, in the first book there, he says, please test your servants for 10 days. Give us nothing but vegetables to eat and water to drink. And after 10 days, it says that Daniel and his companions looked better. They looked healthier. They shined. They stood out from the other Israelites that were fed the king's food, so to speak. So I think that speaks again to the importance of eating what God has for us on earth, the fundamentals, vegetables, water. That's what our body needs. That's the fundamental food. Should be a daily thing. We obviously need to eat and drink water every day. So if you constantly give yourself good fuels, you're going to be constantly giving yourself good medicine as well. So the overarching theme with diet, which has been replicated in a lot of studies, a big one called the China study that you may be familiar with. Maybe you saw the documentary Forks Over Knives with Dr. Esselstyn, who had a very aggressive regimen of putting his heart disease patients on a vegan diet and regressed the heart disease. It's a small study, so we can't make too many, extrapolations from that. However, he was able to show that people, even with extensive heart disease, were able to reverse it by going on a strict vegan diet. So plant-based foods are the key. Vegetables, fruits, legumes, all kinds of beans, nuts, whole grains, and then healthy animal proteins, healthy lean proteins like fish, like lean sources of chicken. That's okay. From a heart standpoint, even lean red meat twice a month does not increase your risk of heart disease. Lean, thinking a small portion of lean beef, could be a filet, could be ground beef as long as it's lean. If you have a small portion twice a month, it doesn't increase your risk of heart disease. That's what the big studies have shown. So I'm not saying you have to be purely vegan, but I'm saying that most of your food should really be plant-based to be healthy. When it comes to fats, we want to eat healthy fats. There's a lot of good fats in vegetables and a lot of good fats in fish. The key is getting rid of the saturated fats and replacing them with what are called unsaturated. The saturated tend to accumulate more in the arteries. The unsaturated tend to be healthier and less so. Trans fats you want to avoid. Trans fats generally come from meats. We'll go into that a little bit more. You want to have reduced amounts of cholesterol and sodium in the diet. Minimize your intake of processed meats, think deli meats, refined carbohydrates, and sweetened beverages. Any added sugar is really bad for our bodies. And drink water. We really only need water. So diving into this a little bit deeper, plant-based and Mediterranean. You may have heard of the Mediterranean diet. What that really means is, as a majority of protein, fish, a lot of fruits and vegetables, olive oils, those are healthy parts of the diet. When they have studied longevity, so people that live long around the world, pockets of longevity, there was a couple underlying themes, whether it was South America, Asia, North America, Europe, wherever these pockets live long. One of them, a very common food, was all kind of legumes. So any kind of bean, kidney beans, pinto beans, black beans, all kind lentils. That's a very common food type around the world, and it's a very common theme in cultures that live long. Also, those cultures that live long tend to eat what is grown locally. So think of small farms where they grow the food right there, the vegetables and fruits, and they consume that. Obviously, in modern times, that's not so achievable, but it's making a comeback. You know, you see people that have hydroponic gardens in their home. They're starting to grow things in their backyards in Brooklyn, making little farms, having, you know, more local farms. The farms that are in Long Island and not that far upstate, they ship the food in directly. That kind of concept where you're eating locally sourced food actually has shown to be a very common theme in pockets of longevity around the world. So try to get a good variety of plant-based foods. Fish twice weekly is what the studies have shown in terms of reducing your risk of heart disease. So you don't have to have fish every day. And again, red meat, try to limit to twice monthly. So that's kind of my rule of twos for that. Fish twice a week, red meat twice a month in an ideal world. Healthy fish, think of salmon, cod, tuna, trout, herring, mahi-mahi. Those are healthier fishes to eat. The big X factor with seafood and fish is mercury levels. We're not sure what's safe for the average adult, less so for children, but you should probably avoid any kind of excess mercury for children. For adults, we can probably tolerate some of it. But they generally tend to be in the larger fish that eat smaller fish. So swordfish, king mackerel, tilefish, those are higher in mercury levels. Try to avoid those. Also some tuna that are large. So tuna, bit of an X factor. Again, my rule of thumb is if you limit it to twice a week, you're probably not going to be overdoing it on mercury, and you're going to be getting the added benefits of the good fats and healthy protein. Variety is key with fruits and vegetables. The dark green leafy vegetables have a lot of chlorophyll, very healthy. Darker pigmented vegetables are healthy. Having said that, though, even cauliflower, which is pale, has a lot of good nutrients in it, but get a good variety of colors in there. Purples, oranges, reds, greens, very good. When it comes to fruits, fruits are healthy. Fruits do have sugar, however, so don't juice the fruit. Then you're just extracting the concentrated sugar from the fruit. You want to have the whole fruit. That way you get the fiber that's in there and the other nutrients that come with it. You don't want to strip the fruit. If you drink the fruit juice, you're just having concentrated sugar, which is not as healthy. So not bad once in a while. If you want to have 8 ounces of a fruit juice, not a bad thing, but focus on eating the actual fruit itself to get that fiber. That really brings me to this next point on the glycemic index. That's a way of measuring how much sugar is in a food item. Think of pure sugar. If you ate a tablespoon of sugar, that has a glycemic index of 100. And what that means, it rapidly spikes your blood sugar. So foods that have higher glycemic index are generally not as healthy. There's a lot of fruits that have high glycemic index, like watermelon, pineapple, dates. So you can still have those things, but you don't want to have a lot of it. And again, you don't want to have the concentrated juice. So don't drink a big full glass of pineapple juice. Just have some, chunks of pineapple. Other lower glycemic index fruits like berries, bananas, apples, citrus, those are okay. A couple servings a day. A lot of people have questions about dairy, and dairy is a bit of a question mark as to how much of it's healthy. You get a lot of calcium in it. Probably things like yogurt, fine. Things that are low fat, be careful, because they replace a lot of the fat with processed carbohydrate. So probably better to have regular fat yogurt than, something that's low fat. Cottage cheese, probably okay. String cheese, probably okay. But in general, cheeses are not healthy. Try to limit them. Probably a best to avoid things like whole milk that has a lot of fat in it. So again, emphasize variety, all kinds of colors in your diet with fruits and vegetables. All those different colors represent different nutrients. And I feel kind of cheesy saying this, but what better representation of God's kingdom, right? More colors. We're people of many colors, and we should consume fruit and vegetables of all colors, right? It's just, to me, that's just part of God's plan. That's the way he wanted. And that's what the science shows. If you have a variety of these fruits and vegetables, you're giving your body a wholesome meal. And the same way that God wants us to all be part of the same fabric, he wants all of our colors intermingled and together. He wants us to eat all that variety of fruits and vegetables. So have at it at the grocery store. Don't be afraid of different colored vegetables. Just go for it. The trans fats, you probably heard a lot of that because New York City, very progressive in this, and has actually banned trans fats in New York City restaurants as of 2006, which I think is a great thing. Obviously we can argue the politics of regulating what people can consume, like sugary beverage size limits, like Bloomberg did, and banning trans fats. That gets a little political, but from a health standpoint, I think it's a great thing. So trans fats, think of fats that are in like meat products and whole milk. And also when, if you read labels, you'll see all the time what says partially hydrogenated oil. It's basically vegetable oil that they add hydrogen molecules to. And it's really to make things have a higher shelf life, longer shelf life, make it taste better. It's not good for you. It's just for food manufacturing to make it more convenient, to make their products last longer. Not good. So I'm glad the restaurants cut it out. You yourself, when you buy a product, look on the back, it'll give you how much trans fats are in there. Try to minimize that. Not healthy. It increases the risk of heart disease. Unfortunately, a lot of that stuff we like is high in trans fats, baked goods, fried foods, buttered foods like that popcorn, margarine, frozen foods like frozen pizza. A lot of that good stuff has a lot of trans fat. So we know that's bad for us, but there's a lot of good evidence that it actually is bad. So try to limit that. And I always tell my patients, you got to live, right? I just came off Thanksgiving. My wife made 7 amazing sides, including twice baked sweet potatoes with a bunch of sugar, mashed potatoes, macaroni and cheese, stuffing, all the good fixings. I had it all. So I would be lying to you if I said I did this all the time. You got to live. So enjoy yourself, have those foods you like. But in general, you got to know when to pump the brakes and day to day put these healthy foods in your body. So a practical way to think of the fats, because all these words are confusing, think of healthy fats as like vegetable and fish fats. So avocados, olive oils, fish, those are good fats. Saturated fats that you should limit, again, are the cheeses. String cheese, cottage cheese, not bad. You can have that in your diet, but things like butter, heavy creams, all the processed deli meats like prosciuttos and salamis, that's a lot of saturated fat, bad. And the stuff to really knock out is all the trans fats that they use to fry things in. So making donuts and fried food and cakes and cookies, all that stuff, a lot of trans fats. Definitely try to limit that as much as possible. I want to transition now more to carbs. I think we kind of hit on the meats. Again, processed meats, they used to be a very big part of the diet here, especially in New York with all the delis, all the Europeans that came over that established delis here with bolognas and salamis and pastrami's. All that stuff is not good. So when we say processed meat is bad, processed is anything that has meat added to it to either enhance the taste or extend the shelf life. So think of meats that are salted, cured, smoked, added preservatives. So jerkies and sausages and bacon, all that stuff, really not good. Try to minimize it as much as possible. It's better to eat just regular meats, lean poultry, lean beef that hasn't had anything added to it. That's actually healthier as long as you keep to a minimum. And probably the biggest question people have nowadays is the carbs, right? Carbs are loved, hated, vilified. To clear the air on carbs, all carbs are not bad. There are good carbohydrates. They're a great source of energy for the body. You need it when you exercise, but you want to have good carbohydrates. And good carbohydrates are complex carbohydrates. Simple carbohydrates are bad. Alcohol also has sugar in it. Again, if you limit that, it's going to be fine. Definitely don't want to make it anything that you overconsume. So good carbs, think of whole grains. So whole grain breads and whole grains like steel cut oatmeal, healthier. Generally what that means is when they take the grain, instead of splitting it open and just taking out the germ, they use the whole grain. So that fibrous shell is incorporated. So that's why it takes a lot longer to make steel cut oatmeal, because you have that fibrous shell on it. It takes 30 minutes to boil, but that's healthier. It's healthier than splitting it, taking out the germ and making instant oatmeal. So try to have the whole grain part of it. So whole grain breads and cereals, good carbs. Sweet potatoes, better than white potatoes. Brown rice, better than white rice. Vegetables, every vegetable is a carb, but vegetables are good carbs. Fruits, every fruit's a carb, but they're generally good. You can overdo it with fruit. You got to be careful if you have diabetes. Again, you want to limit the high glycemic index fruits, but generally those are good sources of carbohydrates. Good energy for pre-workout, post-workout, all throughout the day. When we start refining the grains and start using sugar, that's when it's bad. So a lot of that's the obvious stuff, like the sweets, cakes, cookies, but also sugar cereals. Probably know that that's bad. Even cereals that market themselves as healthy are often not that healthy. Any sugary beverage is basically just sugar water, whether it's Gatorade, Arizona iced tea, Monster, those energy drinks that are pumped up with sugar, sodas. You're getting a ton of sugar there. All that sugar gets converted to fat in our body, and that's what makes us gain weight. So when you get that belly, that's all fat, and that's often from those simple sugars getting broken down and not used immediately, but stored in the form of fat in our bodies. So stick to the good carbs, avoid the bad carbs. You can't throw all carbs into one basket and say they're bad. Carbs are good for us. You just have to eat the right ones. One important factor, which I'm finding a lot of people are not familiar with, is one, interpreting a nutrition label, and two, breaking down what's called the carb to fiber ratio. Any boxed or bagged item that you get is going to have a nutrition fact label on it, breaking down to the three building blocks of food: fats, carbohydrates, and proteins. When you're buying any kind of processed carbohydrate, like a bread, a cereal, a chip, a lot of these chips call themselves vegetable chips. They're not really vegetables. It's a ton of potato starch. A good way to interpret that label, look at the carbohydrate. Under total carbohydrate, you're going to have fiber and total sugars. You may be misled because it will say 0 grams of total sugar, but if it's still high in carbohydrate, low in fiber, but 0 in sugar, you're still getting simple carbs, which are bad. So a whole grain has roughly a carb to fiber ratio of 10 to 1. So if you look on a food label and the total carbohydrate says 10 grams, dietary fiber 1 gram, that's a 10 to 1 ratio, not bad. The lower that ratio, the better. Lower that ratio, the better, meaning lower carbohydrate, higher fiber. Really good foods will have like less than a 5 to 1 ratio. Bad foods you'll see have 20, 30 plus to 1 ratio. So for instance, whatever food they're labeling here, this could be a cereal, this could be a bread. You take the total carbohydrate divided by fiber, 37 divided by 4, 36 divided by 4 is 9, right? So 37 divided by 4 is a little bit higher than 9. So this is like a 9 point something to 1 ratio. Not bad. Anything 10 to 1 or less, not bad. You'll find a lot of breads and cereals are 20 plus and beyond, even if they're labeled as whole grain, even if they're labeled as vegetable chip, even if they're labeled as a healthy brand cereal. Don't always be fooled by just the sugar. Keep this number in your head. Carb to fiber ratio 10 to 1 or less. That's a better carbohydrate. All right. Now the last and very important thing nowadays, managing stress. Like I said, stress is necessary, and it's actually good for us to a certain degree, motivates us, and we need it. But stress can quickly spiral out of control. What I tell my patients is stress is never going to leave you, because it won't. If you live in New York City, you're always going to have stress no matter what. We know that, right? No matter where you live, you're going to have it. So managing stress is key. I like to think of it as a necessary evil to a certain extent. You got to have that stress, but you got to keep it in check. And there's always, the serenity prayer, which you probably heard of, which is basically the concept that you're accepting the things that you cannot control, but you got to remember that God is always in control. I like this passage from Philippians. I use this one a lot when I pray. It says, "Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your request to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus." So it's very easy to get overwhelmed and anxious these days, not only COVID, but again, the racial injustice that we've seen and that we're continually dealing with. That has caused a lot of undue stress in a lot of people's lives. So managing stress is key. Many ways to do this. Prayer, which I'm going to get more into, scientifically shown to be beneficial. So it's not just your pastor telling you it. Scientists have studied it, and prayer is powerful. Meditation, which is similar to another form of prayer. However, it is different. Meditation doesn't always involve praying to God, obviously, but it does have a lot of benefits for some people. Yoga is a great way to relax. Mindfulness-based stress reduction, that's another technique where you're really focusing in the moment on a certain thing, which takes your mind off of it. It's kind of like meditation, but it's a good practice. You can take courses on that, read books. First and foremost, one of the best things you can do, again, is exercise. Not only good for the body, but great for the mind. Regular exercise, like we talked about. Eating healthy, well-balanced meals, like we talked about, very important. Effective time management, use your time wisely. I think a lot of us are very busy, and it's important to manage your time. Just getting up and starting with the simple things like brushing your teeth, making your bed, you already feel accomplished right out of the door. So doing those simple things by managing your time can often decrease your stress levels and let you face the day. Set limits appropriately. And I like to think of this as learn to say no. There are times where excessive stress in your life takes over, and you do have to say no. You can't be all things to all people. You have to prioritize you and your family. Unfortunately, sometimes that does involve saying no. And it's not that unfortunate, because sometimes you just need to set limits. We're all very busy people, and you have to learn how to do that. And it's not easy. The church is often surrounded by a lot of very altruistic people that want to help others, that are very selfless. And that's a beautiful thing. And God has made us that way. However, he also wants you to prioritize you and your family. So setting limits is important. Make time for the things you like to do. Hobbies, interests, relaxations. If you like hiking, if you like playing pool, whatever it is, just something that you're interested in and that you're good at, that makes you feel fulfilled and is a great way to de-stress, take your mind off of it. So do those things, whether it's a recreational sports hobby or it's something like playing a game, reading a book, make time for that. Adequate sleep. The magic number with sleep is 7 hours. Most adults need that. 7 hours is key to preventing all kinds of health problems. Adults that regularly get less than 7 hours of sleep per night are at higher risk of all kinds of health problems. The good news is you don't need much more than that. 7 hours is enough, up to 8. There's actually, it's kind of like a U-shaped curve. There's some evidence that if you get more than 8 hours, it actually also leads to bad health outcomes. So there's a sweet spot of good sleep you want to get. Everybody is a little bit different with that, but most adults need 7 hours. Along with making time for hobbies, spending time with friends and family, very important, very difficult these days, but doing stuff like this where we connect with each other, doing your connect groups, that's key. Being there with your friends and family, that is key for stress management. I've experienced that. Sometimes, I've had a long day. I've talked a lot to my patients. I don't want to go to my connect group and talk more, but after having done it, I feel a lot better. And I think that's that time you're spending with friends and that church family that really revitalizes you and kind of helps you de-stress. So prayer, very powerful thing. And like I said, this is not just something that the church preaches. This is something that science has backed, and it's very, very useful. I pray all throughout the day. Pray morning. I pray sometimes when I'm with my patients. Sometimes I'm like, please God, just help this person because I don't know what to do. Other times I generally pray with them right then and there. And I pray at night too. And that make that a part of your day, just like you make healthy habits a part of your day. There's a passage in Jeremiah, which I like to use for health and resilience. It says, but I will restore you to health and heal your wounds, declares the Lord. That's a good short one to keep in your mind, that God is the ultimate physician. He's the one that's going to restore you to health. And we can do that through prayer. Studies have shown that people who attend church services more than once weekly, so people that, go to church on Sunday, then go to a connect group or some other kind of prayer group throughout the week, are less likely to die. They followed groups of people who don't and people who do, and over a 15 to 18 year period, both men and women, less likely to die over that time period if they attended church regularly. Intercessory prayer, praying for other people, can improve the health of the person prayed for. They've done studies on that too. And praying for others, very important. Don't underestimate the power of prayer. Pray for people in your life. Pray for your family and friends, your connect group. Pray for our pastors. Pray for everybody's health. It's very important. Personal prayer, praying for yourself, has been shown to lead to less anxiety and depressive symptoms. It increases a neurotransmitter called dopamine, which you probably heard of, and that is associated with positive reward, making us feel good. So people who pray tend to have less anxiety and less depressive symptoms. Whether you have clinical depression or not, it decreases the frequency of those symptoms. People with strong religious beliefs, which I think that's probably a lot of us in this category. If you're jumping on this tonight, you probably have strong religious beliefs. They did a study of those undergoing elective heart surgery, and those with strong religious beliefs had 3 times more likelihood to recover than those who were less religious. So again, I think this is showing you a positive effect of prayer. This is God intervening. Prayer can boost our immune system, helps to lessen the severity and frequency of many illnesses, infectious diseases included. So getting, infectious diseases, people have better outcomes if they pray. People who prayed and meditate cope better with illness and live longer than those who do not. And that's the bottom line. Cancer patients who pray tend to have less complications, less side effects. So I can't overestimate the power of prayer. And this has always satisfied me so much as a scientist too, because just studying science and medicine, some people see it as 2 separate worlds. That's only made me believe stronger in God. When you see how we work at a molecular level, at a cellular level, a tissue, an organic, a full body level, there is clearly a design to this that God put into place, and he has given our body mechanisms to heal. In science, we often don't know why, but we describe mechanisms of how things work. We don't know why some people build up in plaque and have a heart attack, but we can describe how it happens. We can describe the physiologic mechanisms, and that's what science does. It allows us those answers, but all those questions and answers to me just highlight the power of God and the structure that he put in place. And as doctors, often what we do is we just aid the body. God has allowed the body to heal. He's given us the capability to heal, and medicine just kind of aids in that. So I've never thought of science and religion as 2 separate things, and actually learning more about science reaffirms my faith and belief in God. So I want to end this by saying it's a call to us as Christians. As you've seen through the series of resilience, we have to prioritize our spiritual, mental, and physical health. We're a whole being, and it's all part of that. So I want you to focus on day-to-day applications of this in your spiritual, mental, and physical life. And again, give yourself achievable goals. You don't have to say, I'm going to go outside tomorrow and run a marathon, but you can say, I'm going to not drink that Pepsi. I'm going to try to walk 3,000 steps instead of 2,000 and just keep building. One important thing I do want to mention too is we need to lay down the stigma that illness or inability to get well indicates lack of faith in God. That's just not true. We know a lot of our brothers and sisters that have succumbed to illnesses, whether it's a chronic illness, an acute illness, and it's not because they didn't have faith. It's not because they didn't pray enough. It's not because they didn't have enough intercessory prayer. And I want to make that very clear to all of us out there that are ailing with conditions, whether it's mental or physical. It's not correct that you lack faith and that you're not praying enough. We know that there's a mysteriousness to God, and he works in many ways. And we have to recognize that and understand that. A big thing on my profession and my practice is recognizing and overcoming disparities in health. There's no question that you cannot examine health outside of the greater socioeconomic structure. People that have less access to healthy foods, less access to gyms, personal trainers, less access to healthcare are much more likely to suffer morbidity and mortality from disease. And that's a big problem. And we have to fight as Christians to overcome that disparity and put measures into place to help people in those communities to get healthier. And that's something that New York City, I think you guys have seen that. It came as probably little surprise to a lot of us in the medical profession when you looked at the communities in New York that suffer the worst from COVID and are suffering the worst from COVID. It basically mirrors every other health outcome in that if you're in a lower socioeconomic area, you're more likely to succumb to complications of this illness. And that is our burden to fix, because it's not a biologic mechanism, it's a sociological mechanism. So we can't examine health outside of that. So that is a big task, and the medical field does work on it, and we're getting better at it. Having access to healthcare for everyone is an important step in that. I've definitely seen a lot of patients that would otherwise not see me because they have insurance through the Affordable Care Act. And because of that, they can come see me, they can get on the right meds, they can get the right treatment and guidance, and I can help them get better. And that's the beautiful thing. Lastly, I want to just plug the profession really quick. You know, obviously there's a lot you can do for your lifestyle, all these things we talked about, and certainly prayer. Everything is in God's hands, and God is the ultimate physician, and it is his express will to heal us. However, he does put us on earth to help each other. So if you do have a health ailment, if you do need treatment, this is why we're here, is to help people. So doctors help people. This is why we're here, whether you're a mental health professional, a medical doctor. If you need help, please don't hesitate. Seek a medical doctor, seek guidance in the church. There's plenty of people here to help you, and there's no reason why you should think that you have to fight it alone. So that I'll leave you with. I'm sure you have questions, probably COVID questions, so I'm happy to answer that. Whatever you guys got, thank you for listening. Thank you for being here, and I'm going to pray for all of your health at the end of this.
Thank you, Doc. Thank you so much. We do want to open the floors to you if you're able and willing to answer a couple questions tonight. I know I saw Paul had one earlier in the conversation. So Paul Daniels, if you want to just go ahead and ask that question to Doc. And Doc, if there's any other things, I know there's COVID as well, questions out there, but go ahead, Paul, I'll let you go lead off.
Okay. I was just wanting to know if there's any science as far as best time to work out, mornings or evening time. You know, we all have different routines and work, and, you know, and so just like, is there anything backing as far as to creating these new habits of what really is the optimum time for our bodies, of a process that is there any, I just wanted to sort of find out, because you talked about the sleep and the 3 hours, which is good, but not specifically as that point.
Yeah, there definitely is. However, I'm really not that familiar with it, to tell you the truth, that specific exercise literature. Bottom line is you just want to do it. You want to put it into place and listen to your body. I know personally myself, I cannot push myself in the morning. I get physically sick and I vomit if I try to do vigorous exercise. But if I do that same routine in the morning or in the evening, I'm totally fine. So there's definitely some individuality to it. And I know there is research on time of day, and there might be some benefits there, but I really don't think there's any strong benefits. You just want to make sure you get it in at some point. And again, the 3 hour window thing means finish your exercise at least 3 hours before you go to bed, or else it can kind of keep you up. That's ideal.
Great. Anybody else, a question you have for the doc?
So a question relative to the diet. Does organic really make a difference, or is it something we should consider as far as better food sources?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's being studied heavily. Organic is really a label that's put on by the food industry that it's prepared and cultivated in a certain way. And it's not clear that organic plant-based diets are better than non-organic plant-based diets at this point. So you don't need to really burden yourself with always choosing organic vegetables or organic meats. Obviously, it sounds good, but there's just no overwhelming data that you should do that. It can often be more expensive too. So don't let that get in your way. If you have to get non-organic vegetables and meats, so be it. But just try to make the majority of your diet those plant-based foods.
Go ahead, Jonathan. I'm sorry.
Hi, doctor. Any opinion on caffeine too much, bad for the heart? Doesn't matter if it's by coffee or by Red Bull, things like that.
Great question. Yeah. And there's actually some evidence that it's good for your heart. Studies have shown up to about 36 ounces a day can be beneficial for your heart. So no reason to believe it's bad for your heart at this point. It can be bad for people who have heart rhythm problems. It's a stimulant. It can stimulate your heart to go faster. Some people are very sensitive to that. So if you notice your heart racing or palpitating after you drink it, you should back off. But the evidence on coffee seems to be that up to 36 ounces a day can be beneficial, maybe even be good for you. Red Bull, don't know. I mean, I don't know if Red Bull studied. In general, the energy drinks that are laden with sugar are definitely not good. So if you're going to drink that, get the sugar-free kind.
That was great. All that info was so important and challenging at the same time. But I also appreciate that you also, you kept it real too and talked about your own Thanksgiving. So we know there's some room for that too.
Totally.
I was just curious about everything that's happened with gluten the last few years and how that's really picked up. Like what your perspective is on that in terms of is it healthier to have less gluten? Does it matter? Anything you want to share there?
Yeah, it's certainly been overdone by the food industry lately. A lot of things are labeled as gluten-free because it's kind of hot and sexy. It is a real problem for people that have gluten allergies and celiac disease where they can't break it down and it causes a lot of intestinal problems. Those people certainly need to avoid it. For the general public though, however, no, you don't need to be gluten-free. However, most healthy foods are not that rich in gluten. But that's another one of these kind of like fads, I think, that has been overblown. But again, if you're sticking to things that grow from the earth that are unaltered, you're generally going to be on a more gluten-free diet anyways, a low gluten diet. So yeah, you don't need to worry about that as much as the public makes you think you should.
Yeah, good to know.
Yeah, and like I said, I definitely practice what I preach. I generally eat healthy, plant-based foods, but I love everything: steak, pizzas, burgers. So we'll have days on the weekends where we cheat, no doubt. You got to live, but the goal is to have the majority of your lifestyle healthy, and that's the key.
Yeah, that's great advice.
Awesome. Anybody else?
Just one last question relative to plant-based diets. You got fast food, Impossible Whopper. I'm sure it's still fast food, all right? So it's going to be a problem.
Yeah, that you're talking about that the plant-based protein burger from the Whopper.
Yeah,
yeah,
you don't get that every day because it's plant-based. It's still going to be a problem, correct?
Yeah, especially the added stuff on there. The bun, that's a bad carbohydrate. The plant-based meats, of which are pretty good, actually. I've tried both the Impossible Burger and the other big one. I can't remember the name right now, but they make Beyond
Burger, I think.
Yeah, Beyond Burger. Yeah, exactly. I think both of them are actually pretty good. However, they do put a lot of saturated fat in it to kind of mimic the texture of meat and to mimic the color too. They use some like beet juice to put red in there. Beet juice is fine, but the saturated fats that they put in there are probably just as bad as like saturated fat that you get in a steak or a burger. So whether or not, replacing all of your beef with plant-based is going to turn out to be truly healthier, we don't know yet. We have to go strictly by evidence. But I agree with you. I think you should look at that as just another form of beef and not make it a mainstay of your diet. But if you're going to go to Burger King, probably better than having the regular Whopper.
Appreciate that.
Guys, first of all, Doc, thank you so much for speaking to us tonight. It means a lot to us as men. I know it's been a long, grueling year. You know, we're coming into a new year, and we're not out of the woods yet. You know, and just, is there anything you want to give us, any information on COVID, or just what's coming down the pipe here?
Yeah, sure. The vaccine, as you probably have seen, has been developed by two big companies, Pfizer, Moderna. It's a new technology. However, the technology's been in the works for decades. So we do believe it's safe. The vaccine is under emergency use authorization review next week and the week after by the FDA, and it will very likely be approved on the spot and shipped out this month. So the medical center that I work for, NYU, they will be receiving vaccine by the end of the month and start to distribute it probably in January to healthcare workers first. I do believe it's safe after looking at the data, definitely effective. It is a little bit different. You may have read it uses what's called messenger RNA. RNA is like a building block, similar to DNA, but DNA essentially encodes RNA. That RNA is not going to get into your DNA. It's not going to get into the nucleus of your cells where the DNA is. So it looks to be very safe. And again, it has been studied for decades, but this will be the first major vaccine to be implemented with that technology. Definitely light at the end of the tunnel. The general public will probably get the vaccine, I'm guessing March, April, sometime in the spring. New York City is going to prioritize first-line healthcare workers, first responders, nursing home residents, and higher risk people in the higher risk areas. That will mainly be older people with a lot of illnesses that live in areas of Brooklyn and the Bronx where it's higher prevalence. They'll be prioritized as they should. But definitely light at the end of the tunnel. So we're going to be there. In terms of, sticking it through, kind of, keep fighting through like we have. It is important to practice continued good hygiene, mask wearing, distancing, because as you've seen, the numbers continue to increase. We're up to roughly like 3,000 deaths per day in this country now from COVID. If you break down the heart disease stats, we get about 1,700 deaths per day from heart disease. So on a day-to-day basis, the deaths are going up dramatically. So we do have to be very careful to help stop preventing this disease. And the way I like to look at all these measures, think of shooting a gun to a target and think about putting walls in front of that target to stop the bullet. The virus is like the bullet. You want to put up walls to prevent the virus from getting through. Wearing a mask, distancing, using good hand hygiene, all of those are walls in between the target that will stop the virus. So if you put all of these into place, then you greatly reduce the transmission of the virus. So given that, we're seeing numbers increase, it is important to do all those things to keep yourself and everybody else healthy. But I want you to know that there is light at the end of the tunnel, and, not to discourage or, paint a doomsday scenario, but viruses have always been around. They will continue to always be around. This will not be the last of it. We will see other viruses because these things are clever, they mutate, and they're able to evade our immune systems and spread quickly. So what I'm looking forward to seeing is all the innovation that comes out of this, not only in biotech, but masks that have viral neutralizing material, all sorts of measures that we can put into place to make it safer. So don't be frightened, but be careful. Definitely be careful. Keep doing what you're doing, and the vaccine will be here, and there'll be light at the end of the tunnel.
Thank you so much, Doc. Man, this has been a very, very great series as we close out this year. Dr. Sweet kicking it off, Dr. Need is on tonight, closing it out with Dr. Schaefer. And I'm hoping that you men were blessed to be a part of this series for this year. And the reason why is that, as we go, so goes the church. As we go, so goes our families. As we go as men, so goes our communities. And we have to be resilient, men. We have to be. And these men have dropped great wisdom on us, wisdom that you know, Pastor Nathan and myself, or not, we can give you the Bible, but we can't give you the other side of this. And so, you know, it's good to have both. You know, it's good to have both, and that's why this series has been so good, because these men do what they do at a high level, and they do it with excellence, and they're they're men of integrity, and they're men of character. And I'm hoping you'll take what you've learned over these last 3 series, people speaking, you'll apply that to your life. I was going to have Pastor Nathan with some info, and we'll have Dr. Schaefer close us out. So, Pastor Nathan, anything you want to let us know what's ahead? Leader of leaders, please speak.
Come on. Thank you, Pastor Shino. Just while Dr. Michael was speaking, I was thinking of God's promise and command to the Israelites as they were coming in. And Deuteronomy 11 says, "You will therefore obey my commandment that I'm commanding you today, that you may be strong. That you may be strong and go and take possession of the land that I'm giving you to possess, and that you may live long in that land." And man, we're going to live long. We're going to be healthy. Then goes on to say it's a land flowing with milk and honey. And we learned tonight that maybe you leave the milk and honey alone, even though it's flowing with it. But we're going to take possession of this land together. We're going to do it in faith. We're going to do it by the Spirit. We're going to do it also by living healthily in New York City. And it's just great to hear men like Dr. Michael, Dr. Need, Dr. Sweet teaching us how to be holistic as we live here. We are praying for you guys, your families, your marriages, our sex and sexuality, the way that we're serving the Lord. And I believe that through this season, God is elevating us and taking us into some new offices, some new places that we are going to possess this land together. So we're praying that way. We're believing that way. And we want to support in every way practically that we can as well. As we close out here tonight, I do want to say, if anybody's not in a Connect group yet, doctor's orders, get in a Connect group. Heard it from Dr. Nee, heard it from Dr. Schaefer tonight. Thank you. Also, keep going on our Sundays there. I know, let's not grow weary of gathering together and setting aside some time on Sunday to connect with God. What I've been meditating there personally is that it is what you make of it. You can put on the YouTube and just leave it alone and walk away if you want. I'm sure some people are doing that. But that moment with God is there for you, and it is what you make of it. So as men, let's try to take authority gently, lovingly, in a leadering kind of way, and help our families connect with God in that moment. Help our home become a sanctuary. So just a little encouragement there. And then as we move into a Christmas season, we're moving into a season of generosity, and we're launching a campaign called For the Love, Give, because we want to model our Lord and Savior who gave us this brand new gift of eternal life because of his love for us. And through this campaign, what we're going to do, one, we're going to support our house. 45% of the funds that come in are going to go for the love of the house. We're going to continue to make sure that we can minister strong in 2021 as we maintain our digital presence, but also open up our physical presence as well. And so this is just going to help future-proof our house because we love it. Also, 45% of this is going to go for the love of the city. And through this campaign, we're believing that we're going to feed thousands of people in our city. We're going to offer legal aid and representation to some of New York City's most vulnerable. And we're also going to minister to incarcerated people at Rikers, as well as corrections officers, and bring change to this city. We're adopting New York City, really, as the world's saying it's dead. I love what Dr. Michael is saying. It's not dead, it's alive. We know better. And so we're investing into our city in this season as a way to show ownership, as a way to show love for our city. Final 10% is going for the love of the world, and is going to do great things internationally. So men, just encourage us during this season to be generous, do what the Lord leads you to do there. But we're looking forward to these initiatives as we launch them in the coming weeks.
Thank you, Pastor Nathan. And Dr. Schaefer, Dr. Michael, would you pray us out, please?
Absolutely. Dear Lord, I thank you for the men on this call. Lord, I thank you for the men in our church, Lord, and I thank you for the mission you've given us, Lord. And Lord, I pray a prayer of protection over all the men on this call tonight, Lord. Lord, you are our ultimate physician, Lord, and I pray 100% health over these men. Lord, you know them. You know if they are ailing with anything, Lord, and I pray that you heal them, Lord. And I pray that you protect them as they go forward, as they influence their sphere of life. Lord, I pray that you show them to be the light in that sphere, Lord. May they be great examples for everyone in their life. May they be healthy examples, Lord. And may they ultimately be a great reflection of you and your kingdom. So, Lord, I pray for 100% health and protection. Lord, we know that one of your many names is Jehovah Rapha, Lord. You are a healer, Lord. So I pray for healing over these men, Lord. And Lord, as they go about their daily lives, Lord, I just pray that you give them the strength they need, Lord, and I pray that you give them the rest they need to carry on your mission. So Lord, I thank you for each and every one, Lord, and I pray that we go forward in great health in your name, Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Well, men, thank you for being with us. 29 days until 2021. Let's finish strong. Let's finish strong. Let's finish together. Y'all be blessed. Thank you for all for joining.
Thank you.